good evening to all our viewers joining us from South Africa and around the world. This is Worldview and I'm Yvonne Katsande. Well, tonight we continue to take a closer look at the Zimbabwe situation. What have been the latest developments? What is currently going on? And what is the future of Zimbabwe? Well, to bring us to light about what is actually happening on the ground is one of the activists, co-founder and president of VIVA Zimbabwe, that is Acie Lumumba. Good evening and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I must say it's an honor to have you on the program. After having watched you on social media, posting all your videos and talking about what is actually happening in Zimbabwe and having you face to face to talk about the situation.
Well, the pleasure is mine, Yvonne, because we watch you too, you know, on social media, and we watch you with admiration because you have done what a lot of our young girls are trying to do. The only pity is you should never have to do it away from your home. This is why we work so hard, so that we can enjoy seeing you from the comforts of our own country instead of from the comforts of a foreigner's land.
Now, talking about that, you actually bring me to my first question. It's like, this is the first ever we've seen a young Zimbabwean activist with so much guts and so much boldness to do what you have done. But let's just start from here. You used to be pro-ZANU, and you were in the ZANU-PF party.
That's right.
What prompted you to leave the party?
You know, I equate it to, I used to be a sinner and then I found Christ. You know, I equate it to, I used to date or was married to a man and then I left him. There is a promise that I joined ZANU-PF for, and that promise was the promise to make the lives of the people of Zimbabwe better. That promise is what we took into 2013 elections, saying we would indigenize, we would empower, and we would employ. When that promise got broken, it is the moment I had to find a Damascus path. It is the same way when you get married and your husband tells you, should we get married, Yvonne, I will give you a house, I'll give you a car, I'll give you children. And you get into the marriage and none of that is there. You now must make a decision. Do you live according to society's view or opinion to say, or do you say, this is not what I signed up for, I am leaving? So I chose the latter and I decided to leave because the promise was broken. It's not what I signed up for. Now, I also want to highlight that ZANU-PF took my political virginity. You know, if there is anything I know about politics, I learned it from ZANU-PF. So I don't hate ZANU-PF. I hate that they made a promise that they didn't keep. It's not a homogeneous entity where everybody thinks the same, where everybody feels the same, where everybody does the same. It's a boys' club that simply now has a head boy who has gone out of control. And I wish them all the best, but I have every intention of beating them in the next election.
Okay, but you mentioned something very interesting, that all you know in politics, you were taught in ZANU-PF.
That's right.
Now you've started VIVA Zimbabwe. The traits of what you say was a promise that was not fulfilled, are those not the same traits that you're going to carry to VIVA Zimbabwe, having been trained by the very same people?
You know, I hear that, and I worry about that too. That do I now know enough, or can I know enough to be able to separate my training from my practice? And it's for that reason I'm not running for political office in 2018. And I made that very clear when we set up VIVA Zimbabwe. My goal and intention is to set up a political party that can win elections. But you must create a governance structure that creates a separation of powers. The trouble you have, the single biggest problem you have in Zimbabwe in politics is you have this thing called one center of power, where everything revolves around one place, one man, one individual. So he is the president, he is the first secretary, he is the commander-in-chief of the defense forces, he is the head of government. So no one can provide checks and balance. You must create a clear line. I will give you an example of South Africa. When Thabo Mbeki was in government, the party could recall him when they were no longer happy with him. In the United Kingdom, when David Cameron, we saw recently when he lost the Brexit vote, his Conservative Party could recall him. You can't do that in Zimbabwe. because he who recalls is he also who appoints. So you have a vice Jesus who anoints, he also takes away the anointing. And this is what we have put in place to ensure I don't end up like that. But leadership is also a position of deployment. I think for so long now we have been accustomed to a leadership of people who raise their hands and say, I want to lead. I didn't do that. I was deployed by a consensus of young people who wanted a political front, and they deployed me to execute a function of chairing the progress or program of getting it done. I am happy to step down the moment anybody else can do it. It is my prayer that I learn better, that I study better. I will take a couple of years after the next election to go and study, to go and watch and perhaps learn different ways of how to lead a government. I'm not eligible to run for president for another 13 years. By the time I get there, I think I'll be a better man than I was then.
So what does VIVA Zimbabwe stand for?
We are a youth-led, prosperity-focused political movement.
Not a political party, per se.
Well, it really is the same thing. It's a political movement that contests in elections. So it depends which choice of words you really want to use. But we stand for prosperity. The idea and notion that you can have a life that's beyond getting a job and you can be happy. You know, prosperity for us is guided by 8 indicators, which is the economy, entrepreneurship and opportunity, health, education, safety and security, personal freedom, and social capital. The idea that your life and what you have defined to be a good life can be chased. Now, that's the belief of what we want to achieve. But fundamental to this belief, Yvonne, is the pathway to get there must be paved by the ideas of young people. That's why I say we are a youth-led, prosperity-focused political movement.
And how have the youth of Zimbabwe been receptive to this call? Because someone surely can say that something has shifted in Zimbabwe. We have Viva Zimbabwe, which is yours. We have Tajamuka. We have this flag. These are all young leaders trying to change something. So you can surely say something has shifted. How receptive have the youth been to all these calls? And what exactly is that shift?
The shift is very painful, and it's very slow, and it must be very calculated. Otherwise, we will hurt ourselves. What you have seen with the activism that has been taking place, this flag, Tajamukas, is you have young people who've become so frustrated, they are willing to lash out institutionally.
They stole the money. They stole the money, 15 billion and 7 million.
But Tilamasa is supposed to attend a meeting with British government officials.
You stay there. You stay there. We don't want you. Stay there. Your son was getting 7 million. Where is the money? We want our money.
The trouble with this is lashing out is not a solution. So every time you get beaten up and then you go home or you go to the hospital, there is now a lingering question of who's paying the medical bill. Every time you get arrested, there's a question of who's paying the bail money. So you now induce yourself to a program or a pathway out of frustration that is going to only cause you more pain and more hurt. So the shift they're looking for is that transition where they can now live in a country that is fit for their ideas too. A country that has space for them too. You know, it's leadership, I always say, works with a ceiling. You can only go as high as the lead that is above your leader. Your leader is your ceiling. So if Morgan Tsvangirai is your leader, you can't go above him. You must remain within him. If Robert Mugabe is your leader, you must remain within that. The problem with this is we have a country full of hot talent, really amazing, gifted people. You know, you are more gifted than anything we have on ZBC, but you can't go higher than ZBC because that's the ceiling. So what happens now is all this talent is in a pot, and the pot is boiling. Oh boy, it's boiling. And that shift you're talking about is how do we remove the lead. This is now where Viva Zimbabwe comes in, not as an activist movement, but as a political party which channels all that energy young people have, the tajamukas, these flags, and there's many other activists on the ground, by the way, channel all of that towards political direction, because the game is played in the ballot box. It's played nowhere else. You can demonstrate and protest all you want. The game is only played in the ballot box. He who knows how to manipulate or win that system runs the country.
What is the current situation right now? We saw a trail of protests, people revolting against the government, some police brutality in some cases, but it seems like things have quieted down now. Is it still the same situation? Have people given up? Do they still have confidence in changing what is happening in Zimbabwe?
I think it's what you're seeing now from an activism front is a burnout. It's the same thing we warned them from the beginning. You will burn out. This is not a sprint. And you must understand you are fighting a highly sophisticated, intelligent body of men who know how to be ruthless. So it's almost the same with you get into a relationship and initially you're complaining that I don't like the time you come home. I don't like the fact that you don't call me. I don't like the fact that you don't spend time with the kids. And then it gets to a point where you're just tired of complaining. And now you're just enduring. You know, you're not even there anymore. You're just enduring this pain in the relationship. And this is what we have gone through, I think, as far as the activism movements have gone, have come. And then one day you get inspired and someone tells you, fight back. You know, when your wife comes home, fight her back. When your husband comes home, fight him back. And then you think you got it under control. So you do fight back. Only for you to fight back, and he shows you that you're not as strong as you think you are. And then you go back into your cocoon, and now...
This is more like an admission.
Absolutely.
That we are dealing with a government that is highly intelligent.
That's right.
Like you rightly
That's
put
right.
it in your own words. So having said that, Acie, is there any chance of a coalition between all these other opposition parties? Is there a chance of coalition?
Coalition to achieve what?
To come up as a strong force against this one huge force?
I think it's inevitable. I think it is wrong, but I think it's inevitable. I belong to a generation that thinks differently, that thinks not about what we are fighting against, but what we are fighting for. I don't think you should come into a coalition to fight against anything. I think you should come into a coalition to fight for something. It is that which you are fighting for, to me, which gives grounding of ideology. ZANU-PF has remained fit and resolute because they are still fighting for an ideology. It's an idea, it's a dream, it's a hope, but to them it's real.
Do you think politics is about ideology though?
I think politics must be about changing people's lives for the better, allowing people to have a chance to make their lives better. I think politics in Zimbabwe has become Zhigure. ZANU-PF ipati Zhigure. You know, when you see them, you are dealing with Zhigure. So you can't go to a Chigure and you want to dance ballet with a Chigure. You know, you don't approach a Chigure and you want to have a sensible conversation with the Chigure. You must understand that to get past this Chigure, and this Chigure has attracted all the kids from ghetto, you must come up with a better show. So you don't say, let's go into a coalition to destroy the Chigure. No. You say, let's go into a coalition to come up with a better show. Give the people a vision. They will sign up to the vision. This notion that we must be signed up to beat Mugabe, let's assume the coalition wins. And let's assume Morgan Tsvangirai is leading the coalition. What does that do for me? What does that do for you? Can you even articulate what it stands for? Can you articulate what Maimujuru stands for? That whole generation, to me, all of it has to go. All of them.
And start afresh.
And we have to give space to the majority shareholder of the country. The statistics will tell you that 71% of the country is aged under 35 today. The statistics will also tell you that by the time we get to the next election, 4.2 million people who are under the age of 40 are going to be eligible to vote as first-time voters. Mm-hmm. I say this to say you're going versus an arithmetic of 3 million existing voters. So you're talking about 3 million people who are making decisions on behalf of 4.2 million people who've never voted, and we're supposed to line up with them. I'm happy to lose the 3 million votes. I'm happy to not get a single vote from there. I'm interested in the virgin vote. That young person who's just turned 18 and is looking to start a business, but no one is listening to them. Is looking to work for their government, but no one is willing to give them the shot. That's the people we're after. I'm not bothered about the generation that's not bothered about me. We actually have to live in the future. Yvonne, it's mad because I keep giving an example that Patrick Chinamasa, the Minister of Finance, is going around looking for $9 billion of debt. The country already has $6 billion of debt. Combined, it gives us $15 billion of debt. We have to pay back this debt in 25 years. If I ask you, Yvonne, who's going to be alive in 25 years to pay that debt, chances are you and me more than he is going to be alive to pay the debt. Now, if I then ask you, do you know why we're looking for $9 billion? You don't know. If I ask you, do you know what happened to the $6 billion? You don't know. So you have a group of men and women who borrow in our name. It's literally like coming and staying in a hotel. You stay in the hotel. When you're done staying in the hotel, you say, next door the bill so that they can pay that I stayed in the hotel. So we're moving that out of the way and replacing it with the transition of young people who are ready to chart a new course for their country.
Now, a question of interest arises after a thorough research on my program, Worldview. Is your party donor funded? Who funds your party?
We fund our party. We fund ourselves. It's this notion that young people can't actually stand up for themselves. Now, are we against donor funding? No. We will take donor funding. Who doesn't? Who doesn't take donor funding? ZANU-PF is donor funded. ZANU-PF takes money, I say ZANU-PF is a terrorist organization, no different from ISIS. Terror is defined in the dictionary as the use of fear, intimidation, or brutality to achieve political aims. That's what they do. So they're a terrorist organization that is funded by some of the biggest companies in the country. Puma, the company that's bringing fuel into the country, sponsors terrorism in Zimbabwe. They're one of the biggest sponsors for ZANU-PF. You find out where Traffic Gura transaction with Puma even took place for it to get to where it is. Puma is supporting terrorism. You've got big banks in the country who support ZANU-PF. Do you
have any of former ZANU-PF members actually supporting you as well in your newly formed party? Do we have people that are saying that they are tired, they also don't want ZANU-PF to continue ruling, and they've backed you up?
I do, but I think the true test of that will be an election. You don't know how big your support base is or who's really supporting you until it's actually tested. This is why I am...
No, I'm talking in terms of leadership.
Oh, in terms of leadership?
We have some leaders that
look, absolutely. You have the former chairman of Harare province, Gome was fired. They removed him from ZANU-PF. Tseningam, former chairman of Midlands, was also taken out. In fact, you have all the 10 former chair people of ZANU-PF in the Youth League were all kicked out of ZANU-PF and they all need a political home. And it's not just ZANU-PF. I've got the former Treasurer General, who's now my SG agency, Gumbo. He's the former Treasurer General of MDC Youth League in Harare, that is. I have the former coordinator for young people from People First in Bulawayo. He's our political commissar. The transition is starting to take place, but I am deliberately making it and pacing it slower, because last thing I want to do is do what Pastor E and Tajamuka have done, where I send my men forward only for them to get hurt, and I'm not able to help them when they get hurt.
I was actually going to ask you that question, but it was going to be my last question, that are we not going to see a Pastor Yvonne in you? The next thing we wake up, you are in America. And the people are still continuing with the fight here, but then their leadership has relocated somewhere.
Look, Pastor E was never in the fight. He never wanted a fight. He just wanted to talk in a camera. He never directed people towards anything. He never really stood for anything. He was a citizen who was frustrated at what was going on, and rightfully so. It's not a negative thing. But he's not a politician. He's got no political training. He's a man who couldn't send his kids to school. And when he got threatened that we're going to rape your wife, of course he would get out of the country.
Is that what they actually said?
They did. They went to his house a couple of times. I mean, they were about to put this man up for treason. That's a life sentence in prison.
Was his wife pregnant at that time?
His wife was pregnant. His wife was, she's heavily pregnant. I think she's about to deliver. If not this month, it's the next month. November she should be delivering Samantha. So I can understand why Pastor E would run. He's not a soldier. He's a civilian. Now you're looking at me. I'm a political maverick. You know, I've been in this game not just at an entry point level. I've been at the height of this game.
And you've been in and out of prison as well.
And I've been in and I've had the chance to run a couple of times. You know, I've got the chance to say, I'm sorry, take me back. But I don't run. Yvonne Lumumba never runs. I'm the kid who grew up in Epworth, and I made it from Epworth exactly to where I am today, and I'm taking everybody else out. You know, there's a popular saying that says, throw me to the wolves and I'll come back leading the pack. I am that guy. I will lead this generation to the place where it's got to go. They know it too. So as they fight me, they're not fighting an amateur. I know which bullets to duck. I know which bullets don't fire. I know which bullets are rubber bullets. You know, 90% of the men and women in ZANU-PF can't fire no bullet at all. Very small percent is the percentage that actually matters. But politics should never have to get to that, where you want to threaten my life. You don't. ZANU-PF doesn't have a monopoly on violence. Okay, remember, I was one of the senior leaders there, so I know violence too. I'm from Epworth. We can be violent quite a bit. So you can threaten me with violence. You know, who told you I don't like it? Every time I got arrested and I went into prison, I was greeted by violence.
So what has happened to your trial? Has it been resolved or is it still ongoing?
I will beat the president in court. And that's why I want to fight him in court. I'm happy to fight him in court. I'm happy to fight him at an election. Either way, I want to take him out. But the case, initially the magistrate's court had denied us access to the constitutional court because our argument is not did I insult or did I not insult the president. Our argument is that law shouldn't exist at all. There should not be a law that's called undermining the authority of the president. I mean, what about undermining your authority, Yvonne? Is there a law to protect your authority? Is there a law to protect my authority? How do we undermine the authority of a man who works for us? This man is an employee, and you've given him power not to be undermined. What is undermining anyway? So they wanted to try the case of did I or did I not insult him. We argued to say it doesn't matter if I insulted or if I didn't insult him. What matters is that case, that section 32B of the criminal code should not exist in the first place. So they denied us access. My advocate decided to then apply directly. Advocate Chadamboka is leading on the case. So we applied directly to the Constitutional Court, and now they are stuck between two very difficult decisions. So they've stayed the matter, which means you can't proceed with the case. It now is in the Constitutional Court. We'll hold on to it until we're ready to make a decision. But the two complications they have is, number one, if they say I'm guilty, they've broken the law. They've actually just blatantly broken the law. Because, I mean, what is it to say F you to anybody anyway? How is that an insult? How is, you know, what if it's an expression? Where is it? Which dictionary are you using? So the first problem is if they say I'm guilty, they've broken the law. The second problem is if they say I'm not guilty, they've opened the floodgates. Because now everybody is going to come out and say, oh, this is not a crime. So the best thing they can do, which is what I think they are doing, is they're kicking the can down the road. So you just kick the can down the road, say we'll do it next week, we'll do it next year, we'll do it the year after. It's a time game. This man ain't got that much time.
Okay, we don't have time as well. Talking about time, I think we've just run out of time completely. What are your last remarks to all our viewers that are watching right now? The youths, particularly in Zimbabwe, and not just in Zimbabwe, but this seems to be a revolt happening all around Africa, where Africa is identified to have leaders that don't want to cede power. Once they're in power, that's it. They're in power for life. So this is not only a fight for Zimbabwe, it's literally for Africa at large. What are your remarks to them?
My remarks are, we live in an incredibly opportune time where young people from across the world are dreaming for their countries, they're dreaming for their nations, they're dreaming for their aspirations. What we now must do with those dreams and with those aspirations is we now must channel them towards political efforts. You can only achieve your aspirations if you attain the political opportunity to do so. So if you're out there and you're a young person, and you think you can save the health sector in your country, you think you can save the education sector in your country, you think you can turn around the economy in your country, the only way to do it is do not shy away from politics, because there is no law anywhere across the world that says young people cannot go into politics. We are in majority. Africa is the youngest continent in the world right now. Get into political office and let's take charge to build the future of the world that we know we deserve and we want to see.
Acie Lumumba, thank you very much for being on the program tonight.
It's been an honor.
And all the best
Thank
in your
you.
journey and all your endeavors to a free Zimbabwe.
Thank you. Thank you, Yvonne, and thank you to your audience.
I am at the service of the people. If the people feel I should go, I go. But as long as I feel I can serve the people and I can do my best, as I have done in the past, I'll do my best. And then when time comes, fine.